Richard Merritt's on trial for the brutal murder of his mother, Shirley Merritt. Prosecution will argue that Merritt killed his mother and then went on the run to evade justice. But the defense contends there is no evidence tying Richard Merritt to the crime, and no motive either. Will Merritt spend the rest of his life in prison? Or will his explanation convince the jury that he's not just innocent, but a victim too?
Richard Merritt was a personal attorney in his early 40s, married to his college sweetheart for almost 20 years, 2 children, a son and a daughter, and what appeared, at least from the outside, to be a pretty thriving legal practice in a very lucrative area of law, personal injury. He seemed to have it all. In 2018, things began to fall apart.
More than a dozen victims said well-known Cobb County attorney Richard Merritt stole their settlement checks after handling their personal injury lawsuits.
Shortly after he was arrested in 2018, his wife filed for divorce. So disbarred, accused, and divorced, Merritt saw his whole world begin to crumble.
He had an enormously high bail set at almost $500,000, and that she had to put her house up to be able to get the 10% so he could get out of jail. Now, mind you, many people were telling her not to let him out, that he should just sit there in jail. But one thing about my mom, if she makes her mind up about something, it's almost guaranteeing she's going to do it.
The Cobb County judge sentenced Merritt to 15 years in prison for stealing more than $454,000 from 17 different clients.
And for some reason, the judge decided to give him 2 weeks to get his affairs in order before he had to turn himself into Department of Corrections custody.
So it's February 1st, 2019, and this is the day that Richard Merritt has to turn himself in. The original plan was that his cousin, Mike, would come and pick him up from his mother's home. He would then drive Richard to the jail to turn himself in.
However, that morning, Mike received a text message, and it said that things were not good there. Shirley asked them not to come and to come another weekend. She said that she and Richard had some things to take care of that day. Shirley's message, she said that she was actually going to drive Richard up to the jail herself.
The next morning when he drove into Atlanta, Mike Jeffco went into her house and found her dead at the bottom of the basement stairs.
On the day she's murdered, Richard Merritt never turns himself in. He just disappears for 8 months until he's arrested in Nashville.
Investigators found no sign of forced injury or any tampering at all. What's more, the 2 weapons that were used came from inside the house.
That means that the defendant, Richard Merritt, had to have murdered her.
The state is trying to weave a story to you out of nothing. What will you not have? You will have no forensic evidence, no fingerprints on the knife handle. There will be no fingerprints of Mr. Merritt on the gun belt.
All right, Mr. Merritt, if you'll take the stand, please.
Do you swear under the testimony presented before it will be the truth?
I do. Right about the 1st of January 2019, my mother's house kind of sits up on a cul-de-sac, and you can see the whole cul-de-sac. And I saw an abnormal amount of cars pulling slowly through, stopping in front of our home. My mother noticed the same thing.
He talked about how, before he was sentenced, he had been the target of harassment by the victims of his financial crimes.
I began receiving hang-ups on my cell phone, numbers I didn't recognize. Some said unknown number, but area codes and numbers I didn't know. My mother was receiving the same thing.
Were you ever followed?
Yes.
So let's turn your attention to February.
Okay.
Tell us what happened that day.
I knew I had to turn myself in later in the day. Naturally, we were upset. And so she sent Mike the text saying that things aren't so good here. And that's exactly what it was about. She was sad. Just not a happy day. I mean, I was about to go away to prison for possibly 15 years. So it was a private time. There was no yelling or screaming.
Now, was there a plan for y'all to have lunch together?
Yes, my mother was a great cook, fantastic cook, and she was going to make spaghetti.
And then what happened?
It was, the plan was we were going to eat around 1 o'clock. I was walking from the kitchen. I had just left the kitchen from keeping her company while she was making the spaghetti when I heard a very loud knock at the front door. So I went to the front door and I opened it. And there were 2 individuals there, 2 men, and they both were pointing pistols at me. And they told me to let them in.
So what did you do?
I let them in. About this time, my mother came to the foyer where I was standing with these 2 individuals. They said, head to the basement and don't say an effing word.
So did you go to the basement?
The taller of the individuals, he was older, probably in his 50s, about 6 feet, walked past me, put the gun at my mother's lower back, and she started to head towards the stairway to the basement. The fact they said head to the basement led me to think they knew we had a basement and had cased the house before. He put his gun on my back and we followed them. She opened the stair door to the basement, flicked on the light. They proceeded first, and as they made the turn on the landing and took those first few steps, by this point, I and the guy behind me who had the gun on my back made it to the landing. He told her to shut the F up and pushed her down the stairs.
And then what happened to your mother?
It was the worst sound I've ever heard in my life. She plunged headlong into the wall. As I moved like I was going to try to go down the stairs, the guy dug the pistol into my back and grabbed my shoulder. The gentleman who pushed her down the stairs put his pistol behind into the back part of his jeans. He ran down the stairs, turned the corner, came back with the 35 pounds weight that has been seen during the course of this trial. First of all, this monster took this dumbbell and proceeded to bludgeon my mother right in front of me. And she stopped moving at this point. And then the older guy took off up the stairs. He came back a few minutes later with the kitchen knife and proceeded to stab my mother repeatedly in front of me.
And then what happened?
He then turned and looked at me, and he pulled out his cell phone. And he proceeded to show me a picture of my ex-wife dropping my children off at school. And he said, and I will never forget this as long as I live, if you say a single word, they're next. And then they left.
You were so scared that you got out of there as fast as you could.
I did.
Okay. Made the decision not to turn yourself into the Cobb County Jail, right?
Correct.
And instead, you cut your ankle monitor off.
Yes.
Okay, so these monsters, do you think that they were the same people who had been casing your house starting at the beginning of January?
Well, they sure knew we had a basement right off the rip.
Okay, and how many times had people driven around the cul-de-sac, as you testified earlier?
Suspiciously, at least 20 or 30 times by my count.
20 or 30 times? Did you ever get any of their tag numbers?
No, we didn't.
Did you ever call the police to say, oh my gosh, somebody is following me?
No, we didn't.
And you were the person who they were after, right?
I'm quite certain that that was their intent when they came there, yes.
Okay. I don't have anything further.
State of Georgia versus Richard Vincent Merritt. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Richard Merritt was found guilty on all counts: aggravated assault, felony murder, and malice murder.
Mr. Merritt, I do sentence you to life without the possibility of parole.
He was going to prison for life. The question is obvious. Well, why did this happen? Why did he do it?
The irony is if Richard hadn't have killed Shirley and had turned himself into the Cobb County Jail, he probably wouldn't be eligible for parole around now.